Hi everyone, my name is Edna. I'm the product director and founder of Horological Atelier. We are a business that does two interesting things. On the one side, we are watchmakers. I'm actually wearing one of our watches. This is the Bovaro Lunoir in the two colors. And we're also a startup. We have built the platform TimeVault, which is a digital product passport for luxury watches. So what happens is for customers, brands, insurers, service providers, whoever is interested in, keeping provenance for their watches, they go through the process of know your customer, which you register your details to make sure you're a real person. Then we approve your documentation. Then you're able to actually access the product. The products to be able to put in your watches within the platform. You provide us with images, and you put in all the personal data or for your phone, for your watch, actually not your phone. And then that allows us to create a token for you for your watch. So as a digital passport with all of your watch information, we ensure obviously that your personal information, like your name and stuff like that, is not shared and kept on chain. Everything is kept on chain. We have interesting modules, but I will not bother you with all of that detail today. Today, I'm excited to have a conversation with Jessica Evans. We're going to be talking about everything exciting, sustainability, project management, and digital passport. Jessica, please introduce.
Hi. Thank you. Yes, so lovely to be here and so lovely to be having this conversation. So by day, I'm a project manager at a social media company, and I focus on bringing content to life and making it super exciting. And by night, I'm very much focused on digital product passports and all things related to fashion sustainability. So I create a lot of my own content around the subject whilst trying to educate myself and other people around me about the upcoming regulations and all of the different opportunities that digital product passports represent.
Fantastic. Sounds like you have a lot to do. I'm a project manager myself, so I have understanding of that. I do enjoy it. It's a lot of process. Maybe that's why I actually do it. So tell us a little bit more about what you do in your evening time when you're getting to know about, digital passports, sustainability, and the content side of things.
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of my driver for being a part of the digital product passport space and working around sustainable fashion is that I've always had a real love for nature. I'm a fashion designer by trade. That was what I studied at university. And so I've always loved creating clothes and making sure they have a real sustainable angle. It's always bothered me that we can create something beautiful, but it then does a load of damage to our planet. And those two things just never really aligned with me. So as I've learned more about the circular economy and seen lots of different regulations come out over the last 5 years, it's really inspired me to be a part of this space and to educate myself and educate the other people around me, especially because it's moving so quickly. And especially as we have got so much AI, so much new tech coming through, all of this can compound and actually really start to create the change that we want to see within sustainable fashion. We finally have the data to create a baseline understanding of what we know, what we don't know, where we can improve. And that I just think is so exciting because we can actually now start to see tangible change. So I spend a lot of time creating content, writing about this, educating myself, helping other people. And I love working with clients and writing educational material for them so they can work with new partners as well and try and bring everyone along on this mission together. It's a massive project. It's a load of work for everyone across the industry, and we all have a part to play.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually really exciting because that was for me one of the main drivers for that. It was obviously understanding that provenance, having the right documentation is essential for especially luxury watches. We have watches that have been around for 200 years, 100 years, 60 years. So you want to have the right documentation and you want to keep that story, clear. But beyond that, like when you think of the circular economy, you look at the whole thing like an ecosystem. You put in good things, the environment is really good. You put in junk, well, you're not going to have a very good environment, unfortunately. So the idea around when I was building TimeVault for us was to be able to say, okay, we want to look at the industry from the design of the watch. We're not asking brands to tell us their design process, but what you're saying is we have the image of the watch that you think that you're going to build, and then the components you're going to put in that watch. You need to be able to register where they were found, not how you make them.
Exactly. That could be trade secrets that they keep, but just sharing that little bit of information about where they sourced the metals, where they got the gems, the leather, all of those little details. It's all a part of what makes that watch unique and special. That's really important.
And that was for me the main thing. Was like the story starts from the design idea. If they want to share a little bit about why, that specific design, then fantastic. Like for me, for my Clevio line, for my Stella Veritas line, it is a very personal story for me because I designed that watch, because of my mom, and when she was unwell, and then she ended up passing away. So the design is 100% based on that. But I want, my customers to be able to experience that design in their own way. They don't have to take my story and run with it, but the story for me, that's what it is. So I know that many brands, especially micro brands, they do these things. Larger brands, they obviously have motivations for their designs, which would be great to know. But in the back to to that part where we bring in where the materials have been sourced, and then we create that passport, the token. So now we have all of that great information about sustainability, how it was made. We create the token for the watch is given to the person, and then the person, maybe they service the watch, maybe they give the watch, or they sell the watch. It tells a whole story because why wouldn't I want to know that I have a watch that was once owned by somebody who is in China, even though I don't know this person by name, and I'm never going to know where exactly they lived, but just know that it's had a full life.
Yeah, like you're creating a connection, and we're bringing everyone together, I think, in a more detailed way. I think it's a beautiful thing for us to know who has owned something previously, what their relationship has been with a certain product. As you say, like you've got a beautiful story behind the design of a watch that you created. And maybe other people, when they own a future watch like that, they might have a similar experience or something different that they're happy to pass along. It's all of those different bits of connection that make us human and make us just bring us together as a community. And I think that's a really special thing that can unfortunately get left out sometimes. So I really hope that actually through DPPs, we can share this stuff and then bring everyone together a bit more. There's so much divide in the world, and actually this technology can really be used for something good.
Yeah, which is that's the hope. So within the fashion industry, we know that the fashion industry is a little bit more forward when it comes to sustainability and all of this stuff. We've had QR codes on our clothes for a very long time. We need to know where the materials have been sourced. What do you want us to know about what's happening within that space, within that industry, and also just I don't know, what motivates you, what excites you around that, in sharing that, so that individuals like myself and other people can learn. I mean, fashion and watches are very much related. They are not distant cousins, they're very close cousins.
Indeed. Yeah. So I think the thing that at the moment I'm most excited about by digital product passports is the fact that we're actually seeing lots of different bits of regulation coming out quite quickly. So earlier this year in February, we had some new regulations and amendments come out about the destruction of materials and unsold garments, which basically means now that nothing in the EU can be destroyed once it's been made as a product. So we can't have any more textile products in theory going to landfill or being burnt, which means we have to empower the circular economy. We have to get everything being recycled or resold, which is a massive, massive boost. And it's the first time we're seeing legislation like that. Alongside that, we've also got coming up in July a new database, basically, where brands are going to have to register digital product passports and products that are going to be going into the system. So it's, again, another really clear step forward and a signpost that's saying this is something that the EU is really committed to making happen, and they really want to actually enable, which I think previously we haven't quite seen as much follow through. There hasn't been so much enforcement. So that to me is really exciting, because it means we'll have all of that data contained and people will be able to access it on different levels for sure. I won't be able to see a huge amount of what the brands put out, but as an end consumer, we will still get key data which can help inform our own decisions and help us learn more about the brands. I think that's really exciting. Looking forward, though, as we go towards the end of the year, I'm hoping that we'll start to see more and more brands actually release pilot projects around DPPs, and hopefully there'll be a bit more momentum. There's only about another 18 months or so until, in theory, it's got to be a legal regulation for every brand that's selling products to have a DPP. So we need to see a little bit more, basically. And I'm hoping we'll see some really creative solutions come out. There's so much different tech and marketing opportunities that they represent, and hopefully we'll see some really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, because I do quite a lot of research around that myself, and trying to obviously convince an industry that is very traditional in the way it does things. Like, it's interesting that you have very new and young brands doing amazing things, but at the same time people are quite conservative. But on the one hand, not to be very difficult on the industry, I do understand there's quite a lot happening from a macro and microeconomic side of things. So people don't always have budgets because there's competition of, we really want to sell our watches at the same time. So people are putting a lot of time in marketing and in innovation and development. But at the same time, there's that one piece of work where we need to push in to say to people, beyond that, we don't want you to be caught slacking when the law comes for you. Like, especially if we come within the space of the United Kingdom, we are starting to hear a lot more conversations around this. But the UK is not as ahead as Europe is when it comes to DPPs and these talks of sustainability. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing, what's happening within the market, what has been the are people adopting the idea well, or is there quite a lot of pushback?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my clients are actually based in Europe. I have very few in the UK, and a lot of the conversations I have with UK-based clients are, we will wait to see what happens. They basically want to have a bit more confirmation. They want to have a final bit of legislation, almost so they can be like, okay, this is 100% now where I need to invest my time and energy. And I mean, that is the rhetoric that does go across a huge range of providers in different countries, right? So a lot of the work that I do with the DPP companies that are based in Europe is about helping them to educate their clients, their consumers, and their end consumers as well about what that looks like, what that means, what the benefits are, how it can apply in lots of different places. So how it can be used for resale, how it can be used for verification, for secondhand, even if it's just tracking for recyclability or helping you to clean up your own supply chain. It can help you identify where there are blind spots or where you need more information or a better collaboration with partners, for example. So it's a lot of finding, working through different problems and finding some different spaces to create content and information and sharing things around that space.
Yeah, that's very, that's very informative, and it's also quite interesting that we're still finding a little bit of that. Let's watch and see what happens. I'm hoping that we can even out. I'm hoping that brands, it doesn't matter which brands we're looking at, and businesses will actually adopt this before even legislation catches up with them, because it helps to shape what's going to happen and how they go about things. But all the same time, I guess at times people do need a little bit of a case study. But I believe that personally, when it comes to, you want to create your own environment of information and not be fully reliant on what somebody else is saying, even though, Europe is a very great, place to learn from, specifically around this area. When it comes to obviously the different kinds of providers for DPPs, there's obviously the question that comes through, which one becomes the official DPP Bible? We know that there's obviously in Europe legislation that has been provided. Ourselves, we go through the documentation that has been provided just to see that our product is compliant, with all of this other stuff they're doing. And then for our future developments, that we will ensure that the product is compliant. What do you think, or what do you want to see from the providers? What is the main thing for you that you want to say to DPP providers?
I think the main thing that I would be wanting to convey to providers is that they really need to think about all the different stages of when they're trying to meet a different stakeholder's needs. So if you're meeting like an end consumer, if I think of myself, I want to see stuff which is creative, which is engaging. I want to see opportunities for how I can potentially increase my loyalty to a brand. What more can they do for me aside from just providing a garment when it's being sold? But then on the flip side, if you're servicing like your manufacturing partners, if you're servicing, people who are working in your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, you need to think about all of the different data and actually how you can make their lives easier, because they could potentially be working across 10 different DPP platforms for different brands. So how can all that data be streamlined? And a lot of that will come specifically from the EU, but I think if they can make their platform as simple and easy to use to help different people at different stages, that's where the most effective ones we'll see streaking ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting, because for us, the largest undertaking I think we've had in the design of the product, even though that's not the full product yet available, it is trying to provide information that's important, on the platform at the same time for everybody, obviously with the right access requirements, for what a person sees. So a user will be in our platform should be able to see certain information, but this can only happen when we enroll partners, brands, actually to use the platform, because we cannot have this information ourselves. So if we had, let's say, starting from the UK, and say that we have watch brands coming in, and then they put in information about their watches, how they do their sources, if they're in their sourcing of their watching, the compliance and all of the stuff of the materials. We create all of that documentation so that the customers, when a customer buys the watch, they have that information. It's provided within our DPP platform, obviously, like I said, with the right information they need to see. But that way, the story of the watch just goes from, from end to end. But the most interesting thing I think about when it comes to data and information, besides the overload of information, because we have a lot of information coming to us, it's in how it's presented. But for me, there's the issue of accessibility of information, of understanding, because when you say blockchain to people, they're thinking cryptocurrency, they're thinking this, and they're thinking that. Tell us a little bit of what you think, accessibility when it comes to DPP information looks like, because not everybody has a computer. Most people have a phone that can go on the internet. What else do you think brands should be doing in terms of, this information being accessible for people?
Yeah, you raise a really good point there, because accessibility and making the information understandable is so important. It's very easy for a brand to say, our garment has got a footprint of 5 kilograms of CO2 or something equivalent. And while that's great to disclose, if you don't know what that is or how big that is, it means absolutely nothing. So what I hope that we will see is not only brands releasing as much of the numerical data as possible. So if people do have an understanding of it, it can be accessed just as a written text on a website. So people with a basic phone will be able to access it if they can access the internet. And then a traffic light system. That's one of the most effective ways I've seen so far of very much a, green, red, yellow kind of situation of how good and bad a number is in comparison to other data. And that comparison initially will probably have to be based off other garments of that brand or other products that brand is creating. But long term, it would be good to see if that is a scale that goes across the EU entirely, and we can actually then have benchmarks for products. I think that's where it would then get really interesting and really informative. If you take that one step further, I hope that we would start to see a lot of data visualization coming out of this. So people actually being able to see potentially 3D models, like AR, VR experiences of what a particular number quantity looks like. What is that in real time in a real space? And I think that will help people understand what it actually means. But that will also then require that technology to develop, and, different teams to have that funding and the expertise in order to be able to build those experiences. So that's definitely a bit further away, but I think starting off a traffic light system is one of the most accessible ways for information to come through.
Yeah. That's very useful, actually, information to know, and to see that, individuals like yourself who work in the space every day are also thinking about it, and hoping that, people learn from it. And again, I'll say that back to the UK market, businesses have, this space to actually start in to design these methodologies and the process of how things can go, rather than waiting for a prescription from somebody else. I always believe in some level of sovereignty in design in how we do things. The UK market is a significantly big market, especially when it comes to spending within the fashion and luxury spaces. We spend millions upon millions in a year. So the fact that people are taking a step back into the actual design and build of processes that are going to be life-changing to brands and to how our customers engage with the brands, for me, it's a little bit of like, I wonder what this little pushback, is to just taking that stance a little bit back. But I'll do a little bit more research, as much as I can do, if I can get any information out there. A little bit on the side of when it comes to the luxury watch space, you think of counterfeit watches and stuff like that, and things like that do not find themselves, within the space of DPPs. Now, when it comes to fashion, what do you think? Do you think there's a way around if we can then consider a counterfeit, I guess you counterfeit a design, you don't necessarily counterfeit a material, can you?
I haven't seen that yet, counterfeiting a material, but I imagine as we have more and more different types of smart fabrics come out, that will be something that people do.
Yeah.
I think that's a matter of time. There's always a counterfeit for everything, as far as I can tell from history. So I think in terms of having verification for a luxury garment, I think if we can consider that and enable that for, really, really high quality pieces, for example, like a Birkin bag, if you can ensure you've got authenticity across products of that caliber and, that much financial and emotional value, then that will always be a benefit. And there will always be people that want to know that they've got that one unique piece. And even if it is not something that is financially initially very expensive, there's always a social kudos of being, in the know. Like if you've got that right thing, it's the cool bit. And that creates clubs within itself and communities within itself. And that's really cool. And then you get awesome collector pieces that you can have. So there's a lot of value in being able to authenticate products across every sector, I think. But it will always be a fighting battle, I think, with fashion industry. And there will always be new ways that people try and, shirk the system. But maybe this will help reduce it or change the dynamic of the problem.
Yeah, definitely. This has been like a fantastic discussion. I have one more question for you. So for the end customer who's buying clothes, not anything expensive, something 10, 20 pounds, something like that, why should they want a DPP information on a product or on a garment that was £5? Why should we say, I definitely want to see this for my garments as a customer?
Well, I think the initial thing will be helping to expand some of the more basic needs that we have around garments. So immediate care, repair, things around that nature. If you know that you can get easier access to washing information, or you can even have like a local setup with like a local dry cleaner or something that would do like a little care for that once a quarter or once a year, I think that would be a great community scheme that a brand could implement. Alternatively, if they're able to see a little bit more information about, okay, I know it's made from 100% cotton, this is maybe going to be less those needs, and we anticipate what those people are going to want. And then we can serve them, we can serve communities, and then we can serve an entire audience. So it's kind of building the layers, basically.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really great. Yeah, because I don't think there's any garment that is less than, or less valuable for anyone to know the information. So it's really quite key, I think, especially when it comes to how do we dispose of these garments, because it becomes the same conversation when my watch no longer works, when it no longer can be fixed. What do I do with it? Where do I send the battery? If it's a quartz watch, when it's a mechanical watch, where is it going to go? Where does it end up? So it is part of that thing that we're hoping that DPPs will allow us to be kinder to our environment and to how we spend and consume things, actually, because it empowers the customer at the end of the day, and it forces the brands to engage with the customers in the right way, which is fantastic. But thank you so much, Jessica, for having this fantastic conversation. We hope that we can have another discussion and teach everybody else more about DPPs and the fashion industry.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.